All right. Well, with that, I'm going to go ahead and introduce myself. My name is Sophia Lombardo, for folks who may not know me, and I am the operations manager for the League of Women Voters of Metro Columbus. When I was reviewing the um, registration link for folks that registered for this event, there was a lot of names that weren't familiar to me. So I think our event got shared amongst other networks in Columbus, which is fantastic. So some folks may not know about the League of Women Voters. So I have this next slide here. First, our agenda. Our agenda of the day or of the meeting is learning about the league, then getting into the nitty-gritty of the election timeline, how to register people to vote, which is the whole reason why you're all here today, is learning how to register people to vote. We're going to talk about the different methods of voting and learning about what's going to be on the ballot for this upcoming primary and general election, and then how else to get involved and how we can bring you into the league. But for folks who may be on the call that are not as familiar with the League of Women Voters, our mission is pretty simple: empowering voters and defending democracy. Um, we are here to spread awareness and spread the education of everybody's right to vote. And we believe in the power of women to create a more perfect democracy. Does that mean that we only support women? Absolutely not. We help anybody register to vote. We keep the women in our title to recognize the 19th Amendment and the women's right to vote and the history there, but we support all folks in learning about their rights and participating in our civic engagement. We are a national, state, and local level organization. So everything that I'm sharing with today comes down from the National League of Women Voters, it's been approved at the Ohio state level, and then comes out through us to help folks in our community. And the biggest thing to know is that we are a nonpartisan organization. So we have several folks on the call that are in the league. I recognize your name and your faces. But if we have anybody that is participating in this training that is not a member of the League of Women Voters, we just ask that if you are registering folks in the community and telling people that you have been trained by the League of Women Voters and you mention our name and you mention our organization, that you remain nonpartisan in what you are um, doing in the community and your work registering folks to vote. If you are out registering folks with another organization or doing other things out in the community, just follow whatever kind of rules and guidelines that they have. But if you are using the League of Women Voters name, we ask you to be nonpartisan. And that means that you're registering people to vote, but you're never telling them who to vote for or even down to like issues or parties or anything like that, unless it's been an approved League of Women Voters stance or position on something. We just like to inform people of their rights. Any questions about our nonpartisan policy before diving into the real purpose of the meeting? Awesome. There we go. Let's get in here. A reminder, please use the chat if you have any questions. I'm going to be covering a lot of stuff, so I want to make sure we answer all the questions we can. Um, First of all, if you are not receiving our weekly email, it's called the Voter. I recommend you to receive it. I'm going to copy this link and put it in the chat. Anybody can receive our weekly email, whether you're a paying member of the league, whether you're in Columbus, outside Columbus, anybody can receive our email. This is where we share lots of information about what's going on in Columbus, Franklin County, statewide. And here's where we will post volunteer opportunities when we have them. Our largest volunteer need is doing voter registration, tabling, drives, outreach, like we're going to be talking
Here I
about
am.
today. Hello. Um,
Okay, here it is. Let's go.
I'm going to just mute anybody in case they might not know. But receiving our newsletter is the best way to find information about what's going on with the league. The second link I'm going to add in the chat here, which will be in the newsletter if you sign up to receive that, is a link that we use called Sign Up Genius. And this is where we post volunteer opportunities to do voter registration events. Here's where you sign up, you commit your time and energy to help us. Sign Up Genius is a great website. It's free, which means you get bombarded with a lot of ads, but it's free for us to use, so we're going to keep using it. So I apologize if you have to click through some ads there, but that's where we post all of our opportunities for you to sign up. And you are doing the next step on here, which is attending a training. Once you've completed this training, you are all good and you're ready to get out there and support your community and register folks to vote.
Oh,
And then if you sign up for a volunteer opportunity around, I try to make it 72 hours, but sometimes ends up being more like 24. I send out a pretty detailed email about the volunteer opportunity that tells you all the information you need to know about where to park, if it's an outdoor event or an indoor event, all of those good details so you feel as prepared as you can to be out in the community and registering people to vote. Not seeing any questions in the chat or anybody in the waiting room, so we are going to move on ahead. So, starting off with some ways to support our work, volunteering. We also have a program called the High School Voter Outreach Program that has a lot of volunteer needs as well. This is where we visit all local high schools and do a civics lesson and register students to vote. So the same training that you are getting here today, you can use this training in that opportunity as well, because you'll be doing pretty much the same thing, which is walking through a voter registration form, but with a 16, 17, 18-year-old. It's a little bit different, but still a great experience to have. Try to get folks registered and prepared as much as possible for their time to vote. We also have two other opportunities to kind of continue this work. One is our voter guide. Many people are familiar with the League of Women Voters. We do an online and a paper voter guide, which is like a newspaper about the upcoming election and candidates, and we need lots of volunteers to support that effort. So if that is something you want to continue working on, happy to support there. And then lastly, election protection, which is kind of our boots on the ground on election day, or leading up to election day out at the early voting location, at Morse Road at the early voting location, wearing a shirt that says, "I'm here to help," election protection, and helping people navigate their first time voting, or if they had to fill out a provisional ballot, what their next steps are, all of those kinds of details. And we always look for volunteers to support that effort as well. All right. Let's get into our primary election, which is coming up in the next couple months here. Some deadlines for to take note. So if you are tabling out into the community, these are just some hot dates to remember. Monday, April 6th is our deadline for voter registration for the upcoming May primary. The deadline to register to vote is always 30 days before Election Day, so it is April 6th this year. Early voting starts the day after on Tuesday, April 7th, and that is only at the boards of election, the Franklin County Board of Election. Tuesday, April 28th is and I say actual deadline. This is the actual deadline for requesting an absentee ballot application. I have several slides later on in this presentation that talks about absentee voting, so we'll get into all of that and some updates to absentee voting. But just keeping in mind, this is the actual deadline for requesting an absentee ballot. Anybody can request today, really starting as soon as possible, but that is the firm deadline for requesting an absentee ballot. There is no voting on Monday, May 4th, which is the day before election. That is pretty standard with every election. The day before, some folks will try to vote early, and it is not operable that day. And then the election itself is Tuesday, May 5th, and that is the deadline for absentee ballots to be received as well. All right, not seeing any initial questions on the timeline. Similar timeline for the general election. We're looking a few more months ahead though. October 5th is the deadline for voter registration, with early voting starting the next day, October 6th. There is a deadline for requesting an absentee ballot application of October 27th. No in-person voting the day before the election, and then the actual election day being Tuesday, November 3rd. Hi, Karen. Do you have a question?
I
Yeah.
I just wanted to mention that you do hand this out, when the volunteers sign up, so they don't have to memorize all this
Oh, yes.
or write it down, because you will get this.
Perfect. Appreciate that. Thank you, Karen. All right, let's talk about who can vote in Ohio and the United States. So who is eligible to register to vote is they have to be a citizen of the United States. You have to be a resident of Ohio for at least 30 days. This point usually doesn't come up that often because our voter registration deadline is also 30 days before the election. So those two kind of balance each other out because it's the same deadline. This is a fun fact, but 17-year-olds are eligible to register to vote and vote in a primary election as long as they'll be 18 by the general election on November 5th. So it's 17-year-olds, they can register today, they can vote in the May primary. They will not be able to vote on issues or ballot measures, only on candidates. And when they turn 18 on or before the general election day, they can vote just like anybody else can. And that's actually partially due to the fact of young activists and advocates here in Columbus that fought for that right to be able to participate in that. So it's a fun fact about Columbus kind of establishing that here in Ohio. You who people can vote if they are not currently serving time for a felony conviction. So this is a misconception we hear often when we are out in the community registering people to vote, is we'll ask somebody, would you like to register to vote? And they say, no, I can't because I have a misdemeanor or I have a felony on my record or I have any other kind of record um, on them. And that's actually not true. In the state of Ohio, individuals can vote if they have a misdemeanor or anything lower than a felony, even while they are serving that time. If they have a felony, they cannot vote while they're actively serving time for that felony. But once they have no longer served that time, they're no longer um, in a facility for serving that felony, they have are back out in the community and they get that right back to vote. And this is a huge misconception, and I believe that's partially purposeful of folks trying to um, deter people from voting, is telling them that they've lost that right. But in Ohio, they actually do have that right to vote after they have served their time with the felony. Not deemed incapable by the court. Those are for individuals who may have other disabilities or instances where they are not eligible to register to vote. This is fairly rare in Ohio, but if it comes up, it's pretty rare. And then lastly, your voter registration being current. You cannot go to vote without a current voter registration that is up to date and accurate. Um, yeah, looking at the question in the chat. Will the Ohio Secretary of State send out absentee ballots for the primary election in May? So you can request an absentee ballot for any election. And we'll get to the slide about applying for them. But it's for any election you can do an absentee ballot for.
I guess my question was, there have been some elections in the past when everybody gets a absentee ballot. But
No.
maybe
Request
that's just
form.
the
Absentee ballot
presidential.
application.
So
an application. Yeah.
yeah, they may send out applications, but I don't believe they will be doing that for these upcoming elections.
Okay.
I do not recommend folks to apply for an absentee ballot if you're not going to actually use it and do that method.
Okay.
If you apply for an absentee ballot, but then you go to show up on election day, on their end, they're going to have that you asked for an absentee ballot. So they're going to think that you're trying to vote twice, and they may ask you to vote provisionally. So if your goal is to vote absentee, please apply for an absentee ballot, complete that application. But if your goal is to vote on election day or vote early, then I would not fill out that application to not confuse anybody. I believe during the pandemic, they did send out absentee ballot applications to folks because that was a more useful tool. All right. So let's get into how to register to vote. We're going to talk through every section on this slide, so don't feel like you need to squint and look at it now. We're going to talk through it all. But this is what the voter registration form looks like right now. It looks slightly different in this past year. They've added a section, which we'll talk about. But if you have any old forms left over at your home or your closet somewhere, the Board of Elections will still take old forms. They just ask that we try to use the new ones if we have it because it makes their lives a little bit easier. But no need to shred or throw out any old forms if you still have them. All right, the first part that I always recommend to folks if you are registering people to vote is to always double check what they write. Do a scan through, look at it all. Um, 9 out of 10 times there's something that needs to be corrected or something that needs to be written in a more readable way or something that was missed. So always double check before they walk too far away from you, before you walk too far away from them. They must use blue or black ink. This is kind of silly, but I had a nightmare last night that I was registering students to vote and they were all using pink pens and I had to tell them all to stop and do it again. So that's what my nightmares are made of, is telling people that they're not registering to vote the correct way. Um, but blue or black ink only. Uh, Print everything except for the signature at the end. If the voter makes a mistake or needs to correct anything, a single cross out line is completely fine, and then a correction as long as it fits in or as close to being into the box as possible. And then we ask that if they do have to correct a line, let's say they put an old city, so let's say they put Westerville instead of Columbus, they could do one cross through of the word Westerville right in Columbus as close to staying in the box as possible. If it goes slightly out, that's okay. And then it's somewhere near the box, near their correction, just initialing their initials, just so the person that checks the voter registration form can verify that it was the voter that made that correction and not the volunteer like you or I that made that correction. If it is, there are a lot of corrections and it's very messy, it doesn't hurt to have them start over on a new form. Um, as long as they're okay with that, then giving them an extra minute or two to fill out a form is always good. You cannot use a PO box to register to vote. So if you receive your mail through a PO box, there actually is a line right here, number 7. This is additional mailing address, and that's where they can put their PO box number, but they should put their physical home address in line 4 here. Okay, I'm gonna move on. We're gonna talk more about each of these lines. These are the boxes that get missed the most. This is the first thing I check when I receive a form. Um, I am registering to vote as an Ohio voter, updating my address or updating my name. Many people forget to make that check mark there. Are you a US citizen? Yes or no? Will you be at least 18 years old of age on or before the next general election? Yes or no? If anybody selects no on any of those two boxes, unfortunately, they cannot register to vote and you can stop them there. So some common errors we see for this next section is box number 8 here asks for your county, not country. A lot of our younger folks will put USA, and I have to remind them that you're in Franklin County, and that goes in that box. Box number 9 is your birth date, not today's date. We get that mix up happening a lot. Box number 10, I think, is the most confusing for folks. It is either your driver's license number, state ID number. It can be when like younger folks, they get like a temporary license. There is a number on that temporary license before they get their actual driver's license. That number works as well. Um, the driver's license number, it doesn't need to be from a driver's license that has one of those stars on it that you can use to travel. That's called the real ID. It costs a little bit more than a regular driver's license. It doesn't need to be that. It could be any kind of driver's license, just as long as it's an Ohio driver's license or a state ID number. I'm noticing that more younger folks have state ID cards and not actual driver's license, so that can go there. If they don't have any of those identification items, only the last 4 digits of their social security number is required here. If somebody tries to write their whole social security number, please stop them or cross it out. We only need the last 4. It goes there. And then box number 11 here is optional for their phone number, but I highly recommend they do put their phone number there. The Franklin County Board of Elections, they will call if there is an error or if they need to clarify something or fix anything. They will call, and without that phone number, they will not contact you if anything if it did not go through, if there was any mistake. Your ID address, so your driver's license address, at this time on February 26, 2026, your address on your driver's license does not need to match your address that you are registering to vote at. So I'll say that again. Today, February 26th, at this time, your address on your driver's license or state ID card does not need to match the address where you register to vote. Um, I say that because things are changing. We don't know what is coming up. I recommend people to have an updated address. Try to have it match as much as possible. Um, but at this time, they do not need to match. But as we all know, things are changing. And so just to be prepared for that. All right, this next section, let me see the question in the chat. Yep. So 17-year-olds can register to vote and vote in a primary election as long as they'll be 18 by the general. On the box here, oops, I believe it even asks, will you be at least 18 on or before the next general election? So primary election, 17-year-olds can vote. Got a question, Chris?
They can't vote on issues. Do they need to request a special? Oh, sorry. Say they can't vote on issues. If they're 17, do they need to request a special ballot in that case, or is that just automatically handled by the
So
board? Okay, great.
17-year-olds, when they show up to vote for a primary election, they'll actually be voting on a provisional ballot, which I think might scare some folks.
Oh,
It
okay, that
still
makes
it
sense.
still will be counted for candidates, but they will not be voting on issues. So it is kind of like a special ballot, like you mentioned, but it is a provisional ballot.
Okay,
And
but that's how they do it. Okay, got it.
yeah, if anybody's been a poll worker before, a roster judge, I believe, is the term for the folks that get trained on how to handle that. Or maybe it's the paper judge. Um, that's where they do that. And yes, your driver's license cannot be expired. Fun fact, this is my job. I've been doing this kind of work for several years now. My nickname in high school was Civic Nerd. I showed up to vote in the 2024 election. My birthday is the end of October. Showed up to vote on the last day of early voting. My license had expired. And so even somebody that teaches these things and like lives by this and educates all of my friends and doing it, it even happens to me. I just showed up on election day with my passport. It all worked out, still was able to vote. Um, but it happens to the best of us. But yes, please make sure your driver's license is not expired. All right, moving along to the next little section in our voter registration forms here. Um, this next area, if you're registering somebody to vote for the first time, they do not need to fill out this section. They can leave it blank. This section is for if somebody is updating their address or their name, they would put in their old address in box 12. If they do not remember their old address, they can put in as best as they can. The Franklin County Board of Elections will still register them. Um, and that goes to another point. If somebody doesn't know if they are registered to vote and you have no way to check that, if they fill out another application, it doesn't hurt. It just makes sure that they're up to date and registered again. So if that is perfectly fine to just fill out form year after year after year. It might drive the Board of Elections a little crazy seeing your name come up, but at least you know you're registered to vote and can vote. So the old address would go in box 12 here. And if they change their name, their old name would go in box 13. Former signature can be a little tricky. It doesn't need to be perfect, just as close as possible. All right. This is the newer area. So your old voter registration forms might look slightly different than this. What is the same is this left side here that says your signature date. This is where you'd put today's date in, not your birth date. And your signature should match as closely as possible as to any official documents you use. Most people, that is their driver's license or their passport or any other kind of official document. When we are working with young folks, many times their signature is this might be the first time that they've ever had to sign something, or their signature is not in cursive. Anytime I receive a voter registration form and I double check and their signature is not in cursive, I just like to ask them, like, is this how you sign your name on official documents? If they say, oh no, I make it look nicer, I ask them to please sign it again with that nicer signature. A lot of the time, our young folks say, yep, that is how I signed it on my FAFSA forms or my driver's license or whatever other official documents are. They just are not teaching cursive these days, so it just is what it is. If the voter needs any assistance due to specifically disability, blindness, or illiteracy, we ask that the volunteer that helped them with their voter registration form check this box here, and then the volunteer to sign their name in this section here. This is the new part of the form that came out this past, I think about a year ago, this new form came out right before the last primary election. And the many, many times I've done voter registration since this new form has come out, I have not had to check this box or do this. But if it does come up for you, all you have to do is check the box and sign your name if you are helping an individual with their voter registration form. That's where you put it. It does not need to be the person that ultimately turns in the form to the Board of Elections. Um, oh, Jill, are you not seeing my slides? Might need to look at your Zoom settings. I see a Jill D made the comment. Should be able to see.
Yes, I'm not, I'm just seeing your face.
If you go to your
Another
Zoom,
Jill.
yeah, it's two Jills on the call. If you go to
Sorry.
your Zoom and make sure you have it full screen, um, and then sometimes there's little arrows you can go back and forth. And on the top right, there's an option that says View. You should be able to look at the view settings to make sure you are seeing the screen that I'm sharing.
Full screen. Okay, I see full screen. Okay, I still don't see it now.
Mhm.
I do have a monitor I could plug in, but I don't know that'll help me if I'm not seeing it here.
Try that. Try looking around at your settings. I am going to move forward just for the sake of time. We still got many slides to go through. But
Okay.
hopefully we can get it going. And if not, I'll send the
There
recording
it is.
out to you.
Okay, got it.
Awesome. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, Stephanie, for sending that link too. I appreciate that. So that is the voter registration form. Forms must be returned to the Franklin County Board of Elections. We like to say 7 to 10 days. The next business day is ideal. Um, and before the deadline to register to vote. So we, as a League of Women Voters, we are out registering people to vote till the last day, till the last minute. I think this past election, I brought voter registration forms on the last day, on the deadline day, about an hour before the Board of Elections closed. So we are making sure they get in on time. Um, the forms will expire may not be the right term, but they will not accept any form that has been, the date was signed after 10 days. So we do ask that you bring them back or return them to us to bring back as soon as possible to get them turned in. You take them to the Franklin County Board of Elections on 1700 Morse Road. There is a drop box at times. I like to just bring it in. If you are bringing forms that are in a stack of more than 10, sometimes they ask you to sign a form. I just say I'm with the League of Women Voters and here's 10 voter registration forms, and that's all they need. They don't check your ID, they don't need you to verify anything, you just turn them in. The voter can submit their own form if they want. Often when we are with the younger folks and they don't know their social security number or their driver's license number, um, sometimes they'll take that home and hopefully turn it in themselves. I also recently learned that every Columbus Metropolitan Library will take voter registration forms as well. So if you have somebody that needs more time with it or needs to submit it at a later date, you can bring it to the library and they'll turn it in for you. Um, you are allowed to take any other county forms to the Franklin County Board of Elections and they will mail them to the correct county. So if you're at an event and you register somebody to vote that's in Delaware County, Lincoln County, any other local area, as long as it's still the state of Ohio, the Franklin County Boards of Elections will still accept it and mail it to the right location. I like to tell voters they can check that they are registered within 7 to 10 days of them filling out the form. They can check it online, and we'll talk about those websites on another slide. I always tell them to check because if they check and it's not there, that means something happened. There was some kind of error that it was not received, and to refill out a form and get registered again. Within around 20 days, depending on the mail, they will receive a letter in the mail. Sometimes it's a full letter, sometimes it's a little envelope, postcard style, that says you are registered to vote. Here is your polling location, those kinds of items. It kind of always depends every year what form it comes out in, but it's around 20 days after the election. And like I said, if they do not get any confirmation, they are not registered, so they need to double check. So you can check if someone is registered at voterlookup.ohiosos.gov. There's other websites. I recommend this one as it's the Ohio Secretary of State's website. You only need the person's first name, last name, and the county that they live in. While the website voteohio.gov in any like Franklin County websites, you need a little bit more information, like their house number. So if you are at an event or you're tabling with the League of Women Voters, the Secretary of State's website is a little quicker to search. That's why I recommend them. Um, it is more important now than ever for people to check their voter registration and, like I mentioned before, making sure everything's up to date, that your name is matches what's on your driver's license, that your address is if it can be as close as possible is correct. Um, with current legislation changing, we just want to make sure that everybody is registered to vote, um, and is able to be able to vote. An example of this is my mom, her name is a combination of her first name and her middle name. And whenever we sign up we go shopping together and you get a credit card or you buy plane tickets or whatever, we always have to double check which way they spell her name because 9 out of 10 times they spell it wrong. And so I've recently double checked to make sure that her voter registration and her ID, her name is matched and correct. So always good to check that. Um, Especially if you have a unique situation where your name might be spelled wrong. So you can register to vote online through voteohio.gov. I do not recommend it because you have to provide two forms of ID. And then, as far as a signature, if you were to go to vote and you registered online, they are not going to have a signature on file, or the signature they have on file could be from another source. And it gets a little messy. I have seen voters get turned away because they registered to vote online and there was something incorrect or not up to date. So I really recommend folks use the online form or the paper form. So you can double check it, you can make sure it's correct. They sign it and then you turn it in, or the League of Women Voters turns it into the Franklin County Board of Election. The online form will not work if they don't have anything on file to double check that signature. Okay. Voters are purged after 6 years of what is called non-activity with the Franklin County Board of Election, or the state of Ohio. And what non-activity means is if they did not register to vote, they did not vote, they have not changed their address, all of that counts as non-activity. If they were to not participate in anything for 6 years, then their name would be pulled from the roster and they would not be eligible to vote. But they can re-register to vote and get back on that roster. Okay. Making a voting plan. I've said a couple times now, check now to make sure your ID is current. As we all know, there's 3 ways to vote in Ohio. The first is, and what I recommend to folks, voting early in person, starting 30 days before Election Day, the day after the voter registration deadline. Folks can go to the Franklin County Board of Elections and vote early. Often the lines are shorter and get in, get out. There's some weekend availability. There's like after hours availability. So we always recommend that. Just there's no early in-person voting the day before the election day. The second option to vote is what I think everybody's most familiar with, voting on election day at your polling location. This can work great for folks. My polling location is a block away from my house, so it's nice to just walk over there and be there for many college students. For OSU students, they have a polling location on campus, same with Capital. So sometimes that option is truly the best because they don't have to drive. And as long as folks are in line by 7:30 p.m., they'll be able to vote even if they're not clicking those buttons until way after 8 o'clock or whatever time, as long as they're in line by 7:30. And then absentee voting, to do absentee voting, also called mail-in voting, you complete a absentee ballot application form, which can be online. You could fill it out online, print it, sign it with like a wet signature, and mail it in. We also keep blank absentee ballot application forms paired up with our voter registration form. So if you are out an event with the League of Women Voters tabling, you can have people fill it out there as well. Um, Either option. Absentee ballot applications have to be turned in by a specific deadline that I mentioned earlier in the presentation, but I truly recommend doing it as soon as possible. Um, the application process is a longer process than the voter registration process. You apply using the application, you receive confirmation through them mailing your ballot, and then you fill it out and return it. So it's an extra step. So that's why I recommend people getting those applications out as soon as possible to fulfill that. You can also bring in an application to the Franklin County Board of Elections if you don't want to mail it back. Often that can be faster given how slow our mail can be. Um, Same with the voter registration forms. I think I mentioned that already. An individual can bring their voter registration forms to the BOE if they don't want to give it back to you or mail it in themselves. Okay, I'll talk about absentee voting in just a minute. Voting in person, to be able to vote in person, you have to have an Ohio driver's license or an Ohio state ID or a US passport or military card. You no longer can bring in a birth certificate, a college ID, a utility bill or bank statement or paychecks, any other kind of government document, or the BOE letter stating you're registered to vote. What they're really looking for now is something that has your signature and a photo and that has an expiration date on it. So we know our driver's license has an expiration date, your passport has an expiration date. All of those details is what they're looking for um, to vote. Provisional voting, this is if you arrive to vote and there is some issue, like having your driver's license be expired, like what happened to me, or if you are 17 and you're voting on issue or on candidates only, or if you requested an absentee ballot but then changed your mind and decided you did want to vote in person. All of these are examples, or being at the wrong polling location, that one happens often too. These are all examples of when a poll worker will ask you to vote provisionally. It is a paper ballot that you vote, that you write on. Um, and then you have 4 days to cure or fix your ballot. So you have 4 days to bring in the appropriate documentation, um, do whatever the issue is. You have 4 days to fix it by returning to the BOE. When you vote provisionally, the poll workers give you a paper with all of your next steps and instructions. If you don't have any next steps and instructions, such as you're at the wrong polling location or you're 17 um, and you don't have any next steps, that's okay. Your vote will just be counted a little bit later, but it will still be counted and your voice will be heard. We always recommend calling election protection, even if you think you know the plan, you got the paper, you got everything you need, just calling them to walk through the situation and just make sure you're doing everything right is always great. And election protection is in multiple different languages. This is a nonprofit available to support people and making sure that their vote is cast. All right, back to absentee ballots. Like I've mentioned a few times, voters should only apply if they know that they are going to go forward with this process. You can get stopped and have to vote absentee again if you apply for an app or vote provisionally if you apply for an absentee ballot but then show up to the polls. An absentee ballot application must have a wet signature, like I mentioned, submitted to the BOE by that there's a deadline to do that, but really as soon as possible is recommended. On the application forms for an absentee ballot, you can select multiple locations to receive your absentee ballot. So if you know you're going to be voting absentee in this upcoming primary election and in the general election in November, you can check both of those boxes on part 6 here, to be able to receive a ballot for both of those elections. So you don't have to keep applying for the same election in the same year. Once we get into 2027 elections, you would have to reapply for a different application. Um, in Ohio, you do, for a primary, need to select a political party for which you want to vote in, Democrat, Republican, Libertarian, whatever it is. For a general election, you do not need to select a party. You get the same ballot as everybody else. Great. Um, any questions on absentee ballots? I didn't say the biggest thing. The biggest thing is that the ballot itself has to be submitted to the Board of Elections on or before Election Day. Previously, you used to have, um, back in the day, we had 7 days, and then it got pushed down to 4 days, to turn in the application to that absentee ballot to make up for any time that the mail system takes. But now there is no more waiting period. It has to be in the hands of a Board of Elections by Election Day. Um, so if you are planning on mailing your absentee ballot, starting that process now is more important than ever. And then making sure you have all the necessary information, all of your stamps, everything you need to get it through the mail system with enough time to arrive by Election Day. You know how long your mail takes, whether that's a week, 2 weeks, whatever it is, as long as it's there. I also highly recommend, if you are able to bring your absentee ballot to the Board of Elections. There is an absentee ballot drop-off box outside the Franklin County Board of Elections that you can submit it. Technically, you are not allowed to submit an application or an absentee ballot um, from somebody else. So you should not ask your sibling, child, friend, neighbor to turn in your absentee ballot for you. It should be the individual that submits it through the ballot box. Um, how they monitor that, I don't know, but that is the rule, is that another individual is not supposed to submit your ballot other than you. Karen, do you have a question?
I think that there are certain exceptions that you can turn it in, but you have to sign a form when you get there. Um,
Yes.
right?
There's a
Okay.
whole section on the Franklin County Board of Elections that talks about um,
Like
emergency situations.
you
Um,
could take your spouses and it's totally okay as long as you sign the form and say, I'm attesting that this is my spouse. But
yes,
there's just a few people you can do that for.
exactly. Yeah. Thank you for reminding me. Appreciate it. Pam, did you have a question? I didn't know if you wanted.
No, she took care of it. Thank you.
Perfect. On it. Any other comments, questions about absentee ballots? This has all been in the news a lot lately, so I've been answering a lot of questions about this. So, yeah, Claudia, do you have a question?
Mhm.
I think you're still muted. Do you want to unmute? Oh, there you go.
Um, so I'd like to go to the absentee ballots are mailed to voters the first day of early voting.
Whoops.
I was kind of shocked when I read that because I used to, when I first moved to Ohio, I was voting absentee ballot. And on 2 occasions, I didn't get my absentee ballot till a week
Yeah.
before my, so I'm assuming that's unusual.
I think the word start should have been added to that bullet point. The Board of Elections will start mailing absentee ballots starting the day, um, first day of early voting. Um, start, I think is the word, because it could take some time to get through everybody. And they do it on a basis of how soon you applied. So by the time it comes in,
Got it. Thank
I
you.
have also had family friends who have applied and then did never even got it, and then had to vote provisionally and make it work. So it really just depends on. That's why we always tell people to apply as soon as possible to get it to you. But we know how slow our mail is. Yeah, Karen, go ahead.
Just thought of something else. So, there is, when you do this absentee ballot process, you can get updates on your phone too, as far as, that they've received your ballot and counted it.
Hmm.
I can't quite remember how you do that, if you have to check a box or something, but I don't
Yeah.
know if you know, Sophia.
When you go to check your voter registration with the Franklin County Board of Elections, there is an option. It's the same website where you would check to make sure your polling location is, where sample ballots come up, that same kind of site where you have to scroll a little bit through.
Mhm.
There is an absentee ballot tracker, and there you can
Yes.
put in your information to track your absentee ballot. When I used to vote absentee when I was going to college out of state, you would see me every day checking that tracker to make sure it would go through.
Yeah, and I think you only might have to do it once because
Yeah.
this is how I like to vote, and it always updates me. Like I never had to go back in
Yeah.
and update it
I
again.
think
I did
the
it once.
I think the text feature is a little bit newer. I think before you would just
Mm.
had to check, but I think
I
that
do like
text,
the text feature.
yeah.
Yeah, it's
Do we have any other questions about absentee voting? I feel like I saw somebody unmute. No. Okay. Thank you, Chris, for showing that. I see a message in the chat. That is a good question. I think I have some follow-up questions to understand the situation better. So I'm going to keep going with the slideshow. And then maybe we can chat through that specific situation later, because it's some piece of information that I think I would need to know first. But I appreciate the question. Stephanie asked about rejection rate. Stephanie, do you want to ask your question? I'm not sure if I'm reading it right. What do you mean by?
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can.
I just saw the first bullet point on this screen and I just wanted to clarify. If we apply for an absentee ballot, we receive the ballot, but before we complete it and return it by mail, we decide for whatever reason that we can vote in person and we prefer to go either early or on election day. Are we going to get rejected if we go in person because we've already received a ballot by mail? How does that work?
You will be asked to vote provisionally. So rejected might have been too strong of a word to use on the slide, but vote provisionally is what you'll be instructed to do. They just want to make sure you're not voting twice.
Got it. So the provisional vote will still be counted. It's going to be by paper. Okay.
Correct.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, great question. Thank you. Okay, awesome. Okay, we've talked about this, but the new absentee ballot deadline, your ballot has to be received by the BOE by 7:30 p.m. on election day. I'm going to quickly talk about college students. College students have an option of how they would like to vote. One being if they would like to remain registered and voting, what let's call their Actually, let me just read the slide. I'm not trying to say things. In-state students who come from Ohio can register using their home, usually parents' address, whether it's Franklin County or another area. Or they can update their address to be their college location, like their dorm or their apartment, wherever they live in. Um, we often have to remind college students that you can't be registered in more than one place. So if you are making the active decision to change your voter registration, if you want to change it the next time, you have to physically change it. It doesn't automatically go with you. And they have to bring an Ohio driver's license to the polls. So for in-state students, students that are from Cincinnati and coming to school to OSU or vice versa, this process can be for registering is basically the same. For out of students registering to vote, if they don't have any kind of Ohio driver's license or Ohio ID, it can be a little bit more difficult because they'll need to use the last four digits of their social security number. And they have to make the decision of if they want to register here in Ohio or if they would like to register through their home state and vote another way. And they would have to use their passport or another means to vote because they do not have an Ohio driver's license. The biggest thing when I talk to college students is just asking them, what issues do you care the most about? Are you more focused on what's going on here in Columbus and the local races and the local issues where you go to school? Or is your heart still wanting to care about the issues that is where your parents live or your home state or where you would go to if you're not in school? And having them think about what issues they care about more and what candidates they care about more in those areas. Um, and that's where they should register to vote if they care more about that. Um, Often with college students, it is easier for them to register in, if they're an OSU student or a Capital student, it is easier to register in Columbus because their polling location is on their campus. So it's more likely that they will go to vote on election day because they don't have to go too far. Many college students will not have cars, so driving up to early voting is not an option. And the process for absentee ballots can kind of scare off our college students because it's printing something, signing something, mailing something, all things that they don't normally have to do um, in their regular lives. So it can be a little frustrating for them. But reminding them to bring a valid ID um, is the most important thing. Tips and tricks for voter registration. When we are out talking to our community members, being present and engaging, talking to them about how cool and exciting it is to vote, giving them a round of applause when they register to vote, especially if it's their first time, really connecting to their community. If they're talking to you about an issue like potholes on their street or something that's going on, telling them, well, now that you're registered to vote, you can do something about that. You can use your voice. You can vote for changing that. It's really special to them. When you're out doing voter registration, it's so helpful to have a buddy with you, having a partner, especially if it's your first time, having somebody to kind of check it over. I mentioned this already, but being nonpartisan is great, especially if you're with the League of Women Voters. It's mandatory that you are nonpartisan. But even if you are out doing voter registration with another group or another individual that is not nonpartisan, I feel like our community members are more willing to do voter registration and talk to you if they know you are nonpartisan, as you're a safer place to talk to about these issues and not feeling pressured to vote in a certain direction or a certain person. Um, so that's why we recommend being nonpartisan, even with you're not with the League of Women Voters. I always tell people wear comfy shoes and bring water, especially if it's an outdoor event and you're talking a lot. We always try to have some kind of takeaways with our voter registration. It is um, it is illegal to give somebody a prize for registering to vote. So if you are offering candy or offering somebody a raffle ticket, you have to offer it to anybody you are talking to, whether they actually register or not. That's why when we are out tabling in the community, we just have candy all over the table and um, anybody who wants it can have it. But we can't say, oh, you didn't register to vote, you can't have candy. It has to be available to everybody. Um, I always tell people to approach every situation with understanding and kindness, even if you are solely voting is the most important thing in the world. Many people come from households where it's not part of their regular um, yearly civic duty, or maybe their parents didn't vote, or maybe they have some kind of felony record, so they feel like they shouldn't vote or have the misconception that they are not able to vote. There are so many reasons why folks may not feel connected to this issue or feel like their voice is heard. And while we want them to change their mind, we want them to participate, we want them to use their voice, it is never your place to make anybody feel judged or shamed or, force their hand to sign a form or anything. Just approaching every situation with as much empathy and kindness as possible. And it's always great to have some kind of follow-up action. So if somebody registered to vote, then you can say, we have a petition if you would like to sign now, or do you want to volunteer with us, or do you know what your voting plan is to kind of continue that. Once they're registered, that's just step one. So getting them engaged in the different ways to participate is the next step. Yeah, Karen, we have these awesome pledge to vote cards. They're currently made more for our high school youth that we work with. It is a program that the State League of Women Voters has where they send out text alerts to folks that are in high school to tell them that you registered to vote, now you can vote. They're currently working on a version that is more geared to not just high school students, but anybody in the community. But I believe that the grant that they received for that program is specific to high school voting. Um, but it is a great program to get people to remind them that, there's more than just registering, you actually have to show up too. So like I said, there's many misconceptions, a lot of misinformation out there about voting. Some of it I think comes from just internally, people having feelings or family systems, people being told things their whole life, and then some misconceptions and some misinformation is coming from other sources that we are trying to actively defeat. So it's things that you'll often hear if you're out registering voters is people say, I don't vote because my vote doesn't count, or I don't know enough about it. Um, though that always hurts my heart when I hear people say that, because those are so easily people can be told that their vote doesn't matter, and that's our biggest issue is telling them that it does matter. There's many elections, local elections that are often won by just a handful of votes, and I think many people that feel this way are looking at big presidential elections where it feels like your one vote may not make a difference, but really honing it into a local candidate or a local issue or ballot measure that makes more of a difference, and every vote does count in that way. I tell people that say this is that you don't have to vote on everything on the ballot. If you feel like voting for the president or voting for a certain position or issue that your vote doesn't matter or you don't want to participate in that part of that race, you can skip it and only vote on local issues or only vote on certain candidates. That's totally fine. I feel like a lot of young folks feel like the whole system is they have to have all this homework done and all of this research done and know every little thing about every single race, and that can be really intimidating for folks. So they don't have to do every single thing. It's not a test. They can leave things blank if they would like to. Um, Other things that you hear is I don't have transportation, ID, etc. This is where we are trying to actively, the IDs is trying to help people get their information that they can vote with a social security number, that they can vote with a passport, different options. Transportation, here in Columbus, Coda buses are free on election day. And there is Uber and Lyft sometimes gives um, like little coupons or codes, and that's where absentee voting can be helpful for folks that don't have transportation. Accessibility needs, again, absentee voting is great for this. There is curbside or drive-up voting. Every single polling location has to be ADA accessible and have what's called curbside or pull-up drive-up voting. The Early Vote Center at Franklin County Board of Elections also has curbside drive-up voting. You do not need to get out of your car. You can have somebody else drive you. I've done this with friends a couple times, and it is very nice, and it'd be very accessible to folks that need that. Hearing the process is confusing. I understand that. But it's really empowering that you can still do it. Like, even if the process is confusing, even if people are telling you that it doesn't matter or whatever things are telling you, there's a sense of accomplishment that one feels when they're able to get through it and do it. So that's kind of my response to hearing that. And then we talked about this. I have a felony conviction. If you are talking to me right now and we're out in the community and talking over this table, you are not actively serving your time and you are eligible to vote. Even if you're on parole, even if you're on probation, you are eligible to vote if you're not actively serving time with that felony conviction. So that is empowering for folks to hear that they have that right back. That is a great question, Jill. Um, There was another organization here in Columbus called Vote Writers that was doing that kind of work. So Jill's question was, thanks, Chris, for sending that link. We were thinking the same thing. Jill's question is League of Women Voters helping people get the paperwork they need to vote, helping them with birth certificates, social security cards? And my answer is in the past, Vote Writers was doing a lot of that incredible work, and we were just uplifting their work because that was their whole thing, with funding cuts and other things going on. Potential legislation being passed that might make us shift kind of our mission a little bit. This is an area that we have many people looking into to do this exact work. So thank you for asking. It's more important now than ever that we help
As
people. Yeah, go for it, Chris.
as I understand it, Vote Riders is still doing what they can. They still have people navigating people through the ID process of tracking down the birth certificate from a county records office that burned down in 1973 or whatever. So
Yeah, they're an incredible organization that we definitely want to uplift and then continue that work as much as possible. Great question. Okay, it is 6:33. Awesome. We're piling along. What's on my primary election ballot? Many folks may not know the difference between a primary and a general election, and we always just use the example. Have you ever filled out like a fantasy football or a March Madness bracket, and you pick candidates and you pick teams, and it goes smaller to smaller? We're narrowing the field. So in a primary election, there can be multiple candidates running in the same political party, and we're narrowing it down to be one top candidate to beat the other ones. I'm gonna, there we go. So this upcoming primary election, which is on Tuesday, May 5th, we have US Senate and all US House elections. Statewide candidates, we have our governor and lieutenant governor, which I'm sure is all over every ad that you're all getting is I'm also getting all of the ads for that race. Attorney General, Secretary of State, Auditor, and Treasurer is all up this upcoming primary election as well. We have state senator for odd districts and all House districts for the state level are up on this primary election, and there's some state Supreme Court races. Countywide, we have, I believe, 9 judges in Franklin County that are up for election, and we have a county commissioner and county auditor. For these candidates, there are many candidates that they will be the only person running for their party. And so it kind of seems silly that we have a primary election when there's only one candidate running from that party. But that's just the way it is. And they might be the only person running at all. So you can choose to vote for them or skip them because you know that they will be selected for the general anyways. So I think that kind of confuses people when they show up to vote and there's only one choice. But that's just how it is sometimes. We're always looking for more people to run to make it as fair and representative as possible. There are no statewide issues currently that are going to be on the primary ballot. I say that currently something may come up, but likelihood not. For the primary election, there's several that will be up in the general election in November. Locally, Columbus residents, we will have the Columbus Safety Collective. Their issue that they've been fighting for will be on Columbus ballots. There are other things that might be on other areas. I know like Franklin Township has a levy that they want people to vote on. And of course, if you get down to the nitty-gritty, there's liquor laws and Sunday sales and all of that that might be on your ballot. That gets very hyper specific to areas. So that is the primary election. For the general election, what is on the ballot? Again, it's just the final decisions for those same races. US Senate, all US House, statewide candidates, all the same, just narrowing that field down to the final candidates. Resources to find information on the upcoming election. I always tell people about Vote 411, which is the website that the League of Women Voters organizes. If you're not familiar with Vote 411, it is a nonpartisan, non-biased source. We write questions for candidates. We send those questions to the candidates to answer. They answer in their own words. We don't edit anything, not even typos. They submit their responses and we post it publicly on vote411.org. And then for general elections, we print out a voter guide, which is where we need lots of volunteers to help us pass out amongst the community. But it gives individuals a chance to read over the candidates, read their answers, and make decisions on who they want to vote for. The website can also act as kind of a sample ballot. You can online actually click on the candidate that you want to vote for, and at the very end, it tells you a summary that you can print out or take a picture of and have with you when you go to vote. So you're reminded of who you wanted to vote for and what their issues are that they care about. Election protection, I've mentioned a few times, but is a great resource to go to if you have any questions about IDs or if you were turned away to vote. All of those resources, they are a nonpartisan source there. And then just calling the Franklin County Boards of Elections, they are very willing to help. They're very willing to, they want you to vote, they want you to participate, so they're going to help you as best as they can to make sure you use their voice. They're not scary to talk to, they're very friendly. And their website can be very helpful as well. So how can you help defend democracy? Other ways to get involved. We have many advocacy campaigns and issues that we are trying to advocate for and fight for. We have lots of community events. We have many committees to join, from fundraising to communications to engaging our members, lots of ways to get engaged with the League of Women Voters outside of voter registration. But many ways to use your voice there. You're always welcome to donate to the League of Women Voters. This work is truly grassroots, community run, and we would not be able to do our work without the generous contributions of many people that care about our mission and care about this work and want us to continue doing this work. So if you are interested in donating, our website, we have many ways to donate there. And then being a poll worker, I've been a poll worker many times. Other folks in this call probably have too. It is truly the best way to see the system work. And when I run into people that say, "Oh, the system is rigged," or "Oh, it's all electronic and decided for," you could tell them, "Well, be a poll worker." Then you'll see how impossible it is to rig the system, or that it's not all electronic and decided for, that there is systems in place and people that make it safe and secure. So I definitely recommend folks do that. All right, that is the end of our presentation. I just got a question in the chat. Can I get voter registration forms for my daughter's senior class? Absolutely. I highly recommend connecting with the principal or a history or social studies teacher, anybody to help. And Laura, I will put my email in the chat and I can see how we can support you in that effort. We also have a high school voter outreach program that we go into schools and teach a very engaging, like